Now you can see that it's recording in the corner. Everyone say hello to yourselves.
Hi, YouTube.
Okay, so we're going to go through vocabulary and talk our way through it. You're going to fill it. I prefer to take notes this way because it sucks to make you guys write a ton, but you're going to have to write a little. So the first one says, when a number is raised to a power, the number that's used as the factor. That's the number on the bottom, and we call it the base. By the way, I write in all caps. I can do the other, but by tendency, I tend to write all caps. Here, it doesn't really matter. So, everyone understand the base?
Yes.
If we go through and you're like, man, that doesn't make sense, ask. The number that indicates how many times the base is used as a factor. That's that number up in the corner. What do we call that?
The
Exponent. So the exponent. That's the number on top of it. And what I'm talking about is if I write 4 squared, this is the base, and this is the exponent. So 4 is the base, and 2 is the exponent. Does that make sense?
yes.
All right. All whole numbers and their opposites. What do we call those?
Negatives.
Not negatives.
Integers.
Integers. We'll get to negatives. They're in there. Integers. They're all whole numbers and their opposites. So they include things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but they also include -1, -2, -3. No decimals, because that would make it a rational number. What's all numbers with non-terminating decimals? Non-terminating means they go on and on.
Irrational.
They're irrational. Don't tell your mother I said she was irrational. Mom, you're just
You don't hear it.
like pie. You just go on and on. That will get you slapped, right?
No.
Yes.
Yes. I would be that to my mom.
I hope not. Okay.
Negatives.
What is an integer that's less than 0 called?
Negative.
Negative. That's where we get that negative from. It's an integer that's less than 0. It's a negative number. Can rational numbers be negative?
Yeah. Wait.
Can I have a negative fraction?
Yes.
Yes.
You just put a dash in front of it.
Yep. A square of a whole number. What do we call a square of a whole number? A perfect square. We call it a perfect square. Well, this is why. So if I'm finding 2 times 2 is what?
4.
It's a perfect square. It starts with a whole number and ends with a whole number. It's perfect. There's no decimals involved. It doesn't drive you crazy math-wise.
So
12.
it's simple.
Yeah, but we call it perfect. Not simple. Simple things are often perfect, right? Rabbits are simple when they're perfect. They're cute and fluffy. The one who lives in my house is fat.
Unless they have rabies.
Rabbits can't have rabies. We can talk about that later.
They can.
Okay. What is an integer greater than 0? Positive. Don't be afraid. But you guys stop making Ellen give all the answers. She's tired of carrying all the weight here. It's a positive number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1/2, the square root of 3, they're all positive numbers, right? Even though one of those is irrational. What's a number produced by raising a base to an exponent?
A positive base.
My brain just went. Oh my gosh.
A positive base.
No.
Negative. Oh, wait, do I have that?
Crap. Raise a base.
Exponent.
I forgot the word. I'll come back. Oh my gosh. What's the positive square root of a number called?
Positive.
The principal square root. Principal. And if you think about it, What is 2 times 2?
4.
That equals 4. So what's the square root of 4?
2.
2. Now, what's negative 2 times negative 2?
It's negative.
It's positive 4. Which means, if I'm finding the square root of 4, it could actually be 2 or negative 2, couldn't it? Does that make sense? But we call the one the principal square root. My brain is still lost on the other one. I'll come back. I blew myself away there. We call it the principal square root because realistically, if I tell you a garden has the square root of 4, the area of a garden is the square root of 4. You're not going to say the area is the sides are a negative 2 and a negative 2, are you? Because that would be a garden in somewhere else. I was trying to think of what they call it in Stranger Things.
Oh wait, what is it? I would know.
An alternate.
Upside down.
In the upside down. There you go. Okay. Any number that can be expressed as a ratio of 2 integers. The fancy word there is a ratio. Ratio is a fancy word for fraction. Ratio is a fancy word for fraction. So any number that can be expressed as a fraction of 2 numbers, what do we call it?
Ratio.
Well, yeah, in fact the name starts with ratio, doesn't it? It's rational. All right, so far so good? The set of rational and irrational numbers. So all rational and all irrational numbers, what do we call them? Real. Let's get real.
I got it.
So we call them real numbers. Braden, are you following along?
Yeah.
Okay. So a decimal in which one or more digits repeat infinitely, like 0.6 repeating.
It's irrational.
We call it a repeating decimal.
Oh.
All repeating decimals have a fraction equivalent. So 0.54
Is a repeating decimal.
it's 6 over 11. 0.54 is 6 divided by 11. It's a repeating decimal that goes on and on and on. It just goes 0.54, 54, 54, 54, 54. It just goes on. But it's rational because it repeats. Okay? A method of writing very large or very small numbers by using the powers of tens, this one you're not going to know, is called scientific notation. You've heard it? You will have to do that this year for 8th grade science. And you'll be tested on it. It's one of those subjects that will come up in here and in science.
Why is that?
Because it's scientific.
Because it's scientific notation. Think about this. If you were to try and get the distance from here to the planet Pluto, how many miles is that?
A lot.
Like, at least.
A lot of numbers, right?
Like over a million.
Over
Well.
1 point.
You done?
Yeah, sorry.
It's a big number. The speed of light is 300 million meters per second. Or 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. I used to use that in the job for the Army because we use radars, and radars send out a signal and it comes back. And it moves at 300 meters per second. And that's how you tell where the airplane is and moving. You've got to use that math real fast. That big number, I can do 3 times 10 to the 8th and make it a smaller number, can't I? How about the size of a flea in feet?
What?
It's not.
It's like 0.2 0.0004 feet, right? Really small. Or I can say 4 times 10 to the negative third. And I can use all that math. It'll make more sense. You've actually done it when we use the 10 button. Remember when we're using that 10x button? 10 to the power button on the calculator?
Yes, sir.
That's scientific notation. It allows us to write a big, huge number or a really small number in a way that makes it easier to do the math. All right. A number that is multiplied by itself to form a product.
Oh.
It's a square. So out there when I hold up the card it says 2 squared. That's 2 times 2, right? 9 squared. Well, that's 9 times 9. You're expected to know your squares up to 12.
Up to 12, like 12th grade?
12 times 12.
Oh, 145.
Good. So if you know, you can know farther, but if you know up to 12, most every question you ever get is going to be in that area. Does that make sense? So if you know those, you're going to be pretty set up. If you don't, you're going to have to go to your calculator. All right, a way to write numbers by using digits.
Yes.
It's called standard notation. If we have scientific notation, we got to have the opposite, and we call that standard notation. All right, number 16. A decimal number that ends or terminates.
A non-repeating decimal.
We call it a terminating decimal.
Oh.
But you can call it a non-repeating. It makes sense. It terminates. Think of 1/2. What's the decimal equivalent for 1/2?
0.5.
0.5, and it ends. Boom. Right? And it's done. 1/5. What's the decimal equivalent for 1/5?
140.5. No, that's
You don't have to guess, you guys. You have a calculator. If you don't know, start using that skill.
Wait, say it again.
1/5. 1 divided by 5, right?
0.2.
0.2. Is that terminating or repeating? Dead on terminating. How about 1 divided by 3?
Irrational.
I don't want you to say it out loud. Let everyone get a chance. If you're not following along your calculator, if you're kicking back, I will take away your chair and make you sit on a stool. Okay. Aggressive mode. Get out that calculator and type 1 divided by 3, control approximation. Or control enter.
Oh. 3.
I got
0.3 on forever. 0.3 repeating. So it's a repeating decimal, right?
Yes. Correct.
Remember, terminating and repeating decimals are all rational. All right, and the last one here. Counting numbers from 0, including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Whole numbers.
Whole numbers. Good job, Caitlin.
You still got number 8 that you forgot.
It came
I can't remember.
A number divided by
I'll cheat.
Oh no.
raising the expected.
Mr. Wheeler's cheating.
I've learned how to
Give him a 0.
Yeah, Mr. Whittle feels really stupid right now. That's okay.
I know. What is it?
And the harder I thought about it, the less I could remember.
Positive base. When did the choice in? Mr. Wheeler, when are these corrections due?
Corrections are due as soon as you get them done.
Oh, probably not like 3 weeks from now.
I do remember right
What the heck? That's not even in my set. All right. It's not even in my set. Now I feel dumb.
Just did you look it up on the internet?
No, I'll get it later. I'll come back to it. I'll put it in the comments. It'll be there. I apologize. All right. Any questions on it outside of number 8, where my brain is hurting me? I'll have it in a moment. End recording.